Kip, you've been an expert witness on a reasonably large number of trials. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to be an expert witness?
It's terrifying, especially at the beginning. When I first did it, I was sort of thrown to the wolves. I was a friend of Elizabeth Loftus. She asked me if I wanted to do it because I was teaching second law. I said, no way. And she says, well, why don't you just go and talk to this lawyer about it? And so she recommended that even though I'm just going to go have a chat with a lawyer, I ought to get a little bit dressed up. So I got dressed up and I went there, and it wasn't a chat with a lawyer. He brought me right into the courtroom and sat me in the witness chair. And so I was right in front of a jury, and he started asking me questions about eyewitness accuracy and eyewitness testimony and what factors impair accuracy and what the relationship between confidence and accuracy was, and what do jurors typically think eyewitnesses, how accurate do jurors typically think eyewitnesses are compared to what the research shows. And basically what I ended up doing was just giving my lecture that I gave in Psych and Law about eyewitness testimony. And the judge even let me use the chalkboard that was in the room. So I just imagined that I was teaching my class. One of the things that happens when you're an expert is that you get a little bit more latitude. The judge will let you talk longer. The other side is unlikely to be successful if they cut you off. So I was able to basically give a lecture, and I got through that experience, and it was it's terrifying while it's happening. When it's over, it's sort of fun, and you think, hey, that was kind of cool. And then the one thing led to another, and I was asked to do it again and again and again, and finally it just started happening with some regularity. But there were a lot of times that I certainly couldn't do as much as I did the first time. Not all judges will let you stand up and lecture and use a chalk and a chalkboard. So sometimes it's much more restricted, and you have to be more tuned into the specific question that you're being asked and not stray from the answer and things like that. But you learn a lot of tricks, or I don't know tricks, but lessons over the time that you do it. The thing that always I found difficult is if an attorney's here and he asks me a question, my natural inclination is to look at the attorney and answer them. I mean, that's what we're trained to do. When people ask us something, we look at them and answer. But what they want you to do is listen to the question and then turn to the jury and answer. That took me a long time to feel comfortable doing. It seemed very unnatural to listen to this person here and then turn my head and answer there. But their belief is that's much more compelling and influential if you do that. I haven't actually seen any research to indicate that that's a true belief, but it's something that every lawyer seems to believe that. So it would be an interesting study to do, in fact.
So based on the research, what advice would you have for an expert witness to maximise the chance that their testimony is understood by the jury?
Well, even though I'm an expert, I think, and they might just believe what I say because I'm an expert, I'm also talking against common sense. And so I think there's a fair amount of skepticism. And for that, you want them to really pay attention to what you're saying and say it in a way that they can understand it. So a lot of what I tried to do was to talk to jurors as a layperson would talk, and not to use a lot of jargon and to use a lot of statistics and to use graphs and things that lay people aren't used to looking at. So I tried really hard to say meaningful information and not dumb it down, but to say it in words that jurors can understand. So I think that's really important. I think you need to, rather than blaming the jury for not being intelligent enough to understand you, I blame the expert for not being intelligent enough to put it into words that they can understand.
So when you started teaching psychology and law, how did you go about that?
I started in about 1981, and there really wasn't a textbook yet. It wasn't a recognized topic for psychology classes, and it was a summer class, and basically we used a number of articles that had been published and went into those articles in some depth. But the most amazing thing happened was about in the third week, one of my students, who was a law student, said he had to excuse himself for the week because he was going to be a judge's assistant. And I said, oh, what are you going to be, what kind of trial is it? And he goes, it's a murder trial, and it starts on Monday. They think it's probably going to be finished by Friday. I turned to the class, I said, why don't we go to this trial instead of class, and then we can come back and talk about it. And so I thought we'd go to the class on Monday, the trial on Monday, for the same amount of time that we have class, but none of us left. We went when the court started, and in the morning, and we stayed until 4:30 in the afternoon when court was adjourned. And then I also figured that would be it, and we'd come home and talk about it. We'd come back to school and talk about the next day. But nobody wanted to come back to class. They wanted to continue going to the trial. So we ended up going to the trial Monday through Friday from the start to finish of the trial, which was pretty amazing. And then I was very fortunate to be able to get the judge to come and talk to our class on Monday, the prosecuting attorney to talk to our class on Tuesday, the defense attorney on Wednesday. And in America, you're allowed to do this. We got two of the jurors to come in and talk to us about what happened during deliberation. And so this was really the most amazing teaching moment I've ever had in my life. But if you're interested in psychology and law, you can read the studies, you can read about law, but there's really no better thing to do than to go to trial and watch what's going on, because it's not like TV, it's not like the movies, and there are so many things that happen that are kind of surprising that if you're just at all attentive, you'll just generate all kinds of hypotheses that you can then go test in a controlled fashion. So during that trial, two publications or two lines of research came out of that particular trial. One, the judge told the jury at the very end to first consider the harshest verdict, and if they couldn't agree to that, to consider the next harshest, and then to keep going down. And there were 5 alternatives, starting with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, and then if they couldn't agree to all those things, then come in with a not guilty verdict. I thought that was a little odd if you're presuming innocence to start with the harshest thing and work your way down. And so we ended up kind of taking the trial we watched and condensing it and giving it to mock jurors and asking them to consider the verdict order the way the judge told them to do, from harsh to lenient, or we flipped it and had them go from lenient to harsh just to see if it mattered. And we had fairly substantial effects that people gave much more harsher verdicts if they began with the harsh verdict, if they considered the harshest verdict first, than if they gave the if they started with the lenient verdict first. And we hypothesized that this was because they were basically thinking of the harshest verdict as a hypothesis and then searching their memories and they were confirming that hypothesis. So they're more likely to end up on that side of the scale. So we ended up publishing that. And another study, another line of work is that the defense attorney immediately told the juror that his defendant looked dangerous and scary, and I'm thinking, geez, in social psychology we learn that first impressions mean a whole lot. Why would you make the first impression so negative? And it got me thinking about, because it seemed to work in some ways, because you knew the jury would probably think these things anyway. And so it led to a line of research we call stealing thunder. If you know something's going to come out, it's better for you, against your client, it's better for you to bring it up early rather than having your opponent bring it up first. And so we've done many studies now on stealing thunder in the courtroom, but also in other types of settings like interviews for a job or a politician being involved in some sort of scandal. And we've shown repeatedly that if you steal the thunder by bringing it up first rather than having an opponent bring it up, that it really diffuses that negative information. And so neither of those hypotheses would have ever occurred to me had I not gone to trial. So I highly recommend taking some time, go to trials, and you'll be amazed at what you can come up with.